Welcome to Let's Talk Ball. I'm Thad Brown along with Carl Jones. Every single week, we break down the X's and the O's from every Bills game, checking out the All-22 film. This is going to be Bills and Texans. There was some bad, and then there was some good, and then there was a little bit of bad. And look, we're not going to spend an hour debating whether Sean McDermott should have ran or threw the ball at the end of the game. I think we've done enough with that. We might talk a little bit about the X's and O's behind that sequence. But, Carl, the thing that people talked about the most coming out of this game was the issue at wide receiver. And unsurprisingly, it showed up on film again. Not many guys were separating. I mean, Keon Coleman separated so poorly in that end of game sequence. He had to commit a pass interference to avoid an interception being made by the Texans. Give me your read on what you saw from the receivers. And I think more importantly, yes, they weren't good, but what can the Bills try and do to improve things?
They weren't good. I mean, for the second week in a row, they've gone against a team that had the adequate personnel in the secondary to challenge them. I think the Jacksonville game was a little fool's gold. I know everyone was like, oh, don't play man coverage against the Bills. They got all these great routes to rub you and get open. When I preface it by saying the Jags, as we know now, aren't a great team, and they were really banged up in the secondary. Tyson Campbell didn't play in that game, and they were missing other players as well. I think their backup nickel got hurt early on in that game as well. So they were banged up. That was a little bit of fool's gold in terms of, hey, it don't matter if these guys can't separate. We'll scheme them open. They played against the Ravens secondary, who I don't think is great. You just saw what happened last week against the Bengals where they got lit up for like 400 yards. So I think when you go up against someone who has decent personnel, it doesn't look as great. Now, one way where I think they can kind of rectify it a little bit is staying out of obvious passing down situations to where you're running those obvious, comeback routes and things of that nature. Instead of, you can run mesh on 3rd and 3. You can't run mesh on 3rd and 12. Like, where are you meshing to? Like, who are you picking off? Like, I'm not getting picked off in those situations. So I think they got to be much better on 1st and 2nd down. And then outside of that, I think they need to do a better job of KYP, know your personnel, and putting some of their better personnel in positions to succeed. I didn't like MVS up against Derek Stingley Jr. on a third and manageable in the 3rd or 4th quarter. I don't like that. Keon Coleman may not be the greatest right now, but I trust him in that situation more than I do MVS. MVS has never been that guy. Like, in no point in his career have you asked him to run that route and win. And then also, I'm not the biggest fan of Mac Hollins down the field. And I know against a safety it's different. Both of those situations were. But I think Curtis Samuel can do some of those things, especially in a double move variety where scheme him up to be that guy as opposed to being Isaiah McKenzie with like 20 more pounds on him.
Yeah, it's been, Isaiah McKenzie too. He also feels a little bit like Nyheim Hines 2.0 in that a weapon that was successful everywhere else, and suddenly he comes to Buffalo and he's irrelevant. And I think KYP is a great thing to talk about with this, because I don't know if Samuel is an elite down the field receiver, but I'd much rather try him than Mac Hollins. And I will say that with the full knowledge that I thought Mac Hollins was pretty good in this game. There were multiple times of all the receivers, he was the guy that got open the most, and you could talk about the fact that all the different, nooks and crannies that decided this game kind of came down to the fact that CJ Stroud had a wide open deep ball and hit it to Nico Collins. Josh Allen had a wide open deep ball to Mac Collins and missed it, and if you reverse those, or if Josh hits it, maybe the game is different. All that being said, I totally agree with the personnel idea. Keon Coleman has at least shown the ability to win some of these 50-50 balls. If you're going to do a comeback route, and really that was what the 4th down play was that, scored a touchdown. It was a well-timed early throw from Josh Allen to Keon Coleman, who does get separation sometimes. And to your point, MVS has never been a comeback route guy. He's more of a deep over, kind of a post or 9 route kind of guy. So yes, I mean, there are many things we could talk about why this offense isn't functioning the way the Bills want it to, but using the better personnel more often, I think, makes a lot of sense in this game. Now that said, some of the better personnel wasn't very good. I thought Dalton Kincaid had a pretty down game altogether. I was, for a guy that I think at some point, and I had a bet on him too, which is why this will hit me a little worse than other people, but he's not separating either. And last year, the one thing you count on Kincaid is that if he got lined up with a linebacker, Kincaid was going to win. You can't always count on that this year, and Houston's got good secondary personnel with Stingley et al., but it's not like an all-star team. I want to see him get free more often. People got on, Josh for not making the throw to Kincaid down the seam. He's covered there. There's a window, but it ain't that big.
Yeah, that would have took an S tier throw to make that happen. I mean, you got the look you wanted. You got the cover two with the backer running up the seam, and you just need your guy to win. Put it like this: that same exact play as the Steelers touchdown, and he had a little bit more separation. I know, if I'm not mistaken, that linebacker was. I don't think he's on the Steelers anymore. So that goes to show you the personnel he was going up against. Alshire is a much better player, albeit not like a star or anything. He won't be anything like the Jets are going to throw out there this upcoming Monday night. But you expect your first round pick, who should be the best player that you have in terms of a pass catcher on your offense, to win against a linebacker, especially in that situation.
Talking a little more about Joe Brady's game too. I thought the pass scheme didn't feel as clean. There were a couple times where guys were trying to rub defenders and they ended up rubbing themselves. There was a mesh between Samuel and MBS that didn't work out. There was a Dalton Kincaid. I don't remember. It may have been Samuel again, where they were trying to scissors on the left side and didn't get it free. So there was a lot that was just choppy about this game offensively. And the person who kind of skated under the radar of all of this was Josh Allen. And let me tell you, and I'll get your take on this in a sec, Carl. I thought he was flat out not good in this game. Borderline. I mean, not just below average, just bad at times. I mean, there was look, we talked about the Hollins miss, that route to Kincaid down the seam. I really thought Curtis Samuel, on the corner was the better call there. There was another throw to Curtis Samuel, was a little out, and this is a small thing, but Josh Allen puts the ball a step behind Samuel, so he's got to turn around to catch it. And that second is what allows the defense to close. There was, I'll finish with this last example, the scrambling left, throw across your body to Mac Hollins. Really the only play of the game where a receiver totally dominated. Mac Hollins absolutely trucks a defensive back, puts the guy on his ass, comes across the middle of the field. He's going to score. He's still running if Josh can give him the ball. And the reason I put that on Josh is there was a little bit of pressure. And what Josh always does, and often to his credit, is he runs, he scrambles. If you step up and reset and give your guys time to clear, that's a walk-in touchdown. But instead, Josh had to do the hero play, which is roll left and try and throw across your body, and couldn't even get the ball there. So, and this doesn't even talk about the destructively bad throw across your body that should have been picked in the first half. So, Carl, for all the things the receivers did wrong, and there were many, Josh Allen was just as responsible for the 9 for 30.
I'm happy you brought up that Mac Hollins play, because when I saw it live, you just see the defensive tackle chasing him, and you're like, man, if he just had a little bit more time to flip his hips. We've seen Josh Allen make that crossbody throw 10,000 times. But when you watch it back, you like, I understand why you're skittish in the pocket. The Texans got a lot of pressure. In fact, they got more pressure this week than the Ravens did the week prior in terms of pressure rate. That's how good those ends were and the things that they were doing up front. But he just never felt comfortable, and he was a little skittish, and that's the second week in a row that we've seen that. And that was another rep where he looked skittish and he didn't feel comfortable. If he just took another beat, like you alluded to, Mac Hollins is opening it up right in the middle. And we've seen him hit that throw. But like, this isn't like he's a guy who's afraid to throw it over the middle of the field like some of these other quarterbacks in the National Football League. That just kind of encompassed the type of performance he had. And I get it. Dalton Kincaid had 2 bad drops, besides the fact that the misconnect, the deep ball where they didn't connect right there. It was some other drops where I'm like, Dalton, first round pick, I need you to make that play. But man, if you're an S tier quarterback, sometimes you got to make the mundane plays. And boy, he looked like he was sped up and just making plays that didn't need to be made.
And then this is kind of the thing you get with Josh. He makes so many of the superhero plays that, there are times when you want him to not have to, like, it's hard. I think it's hard for him to turn it off, to say, I don't need to do it this play. Anytime there's pressure, I'm just going to go out and make the throw, the scramble all the way to the sideline and throw across my body, because it works often enough. But there are times when you lose because he's doing that, and this was one of them. I want to talk about the offensive line quick here. I thought they were not great early. Middle of the game, kind of, figured it out a little bit. I thought they did the best job all year of picking up blitzes. Before this game, there usually were 3-4-5 where just a blitz just wins. And you're like, we had the wrong protection. I thought this was the cleanest game the offensive line had with that stuff. The only negative was that end of game scenario where I know everybody wanted the Bills to run the ball. They threw it 3 times, whatever. There were 2 plays, one by Spencer Brown, one by Deion Dawkins, that allowed pressure that certainly hampered the Bills being able to complete passes there. And is this something you want to, I want to go through this a little bit. Do you have anything on okay. So what I saw in the last 3 plays, and it kind of underlines when something goes really bad, we always say it's a variety of things. First down to me was Keon Coleman just getting whooped. Whatever. Second down was Josh Allen had opportunities with short throws, didn't take them, wanted the Mac Hollins slant and go. It wasn't there because the safety didn't bite. Then Spencer Brown allows the pressure and it's dead. Third down, the Bills have the throw. Curtis Samuel is wide open over the middle, but Dion just gets, escorted back to the pocket by Will Anderson. And Anderson's in Allen's face who delivers the ball, and he couldn't make the throw. So I know people wanted a run, and they asked, why did Joe Brady throw deep 3 times? Well, first down actually was, I thought, the good read. You had Keon one-on-one. It was the right call. Second down was, I think, the quarterback's fault. And third down, you got pass rushed. Those things happen sometimes.
For me, all I cared about was getting the first down. So I wasn't in the camp where, they need to run the ball 3 straight times and force them to use all their timeouts. I'm just of the belief, end of half situations or end of game situations, especially when you're backed up, the first play decides the rest of the drive, or the first down. Getting a first down decides the rest of the drive. McDermott's not out there telling Josh to avoid the middle of the field, the second play, especially when there's someone open underneath. So I'm not really gonna hammer him for how he handled that situation. Should they have ran it on third down? I don't know, but they just needed a first down and they didn't execute that part. Forget everything else. There were guys open on the field regardless of the play call, because it's no different if they run the ball and they get stuffed 3 times and now you're mad that you don't trust 17. So I get it. I tend to, and this is really hard to do in a sport that has a score. I tend to live in the process over results line of thinking. But I'm all right with the process. But get a first down, not go for home runs. The first down is 10 yards, not 90.
Right. And those decisions are made after the head coach decides run pass, or the coordinator decides run pass go. You assume your quarterback has the option to take, the Dalton Kincaid option on second down is open from the moment they get to the line of scrimmage. You can get that 5-6 yards all day long. It's not a first down, but it would keep the clock moving. It would make third down more manageable. And, and I know, look, and we talked about this a little while ago, Mac Hollins was open on a lot of, double moves. So Josh saw it, might have thought, hey, we're going to hit one more double move. I'll make up for the touchdown I missed early in the game. And he was wrong and got bit for it. So, I think those things happen. Offensive line, I think, just to conclude that point, overall was okay. Tackles had a rough day, but when it's Danielle Hunter on one side and Will Anderson on the other, that's going to happen. Let's move to the defensive side of the ball. And I want to start, Carl, with a thought that you talked about before we started recording here about what the Bills do at the back end of this pass defense that I thought was, generally pretty good all game, or the last 3 quarters of the game. But, you being the expert, secondary guy, noticing something that when you brought up to me, I'm like, okay, I know where you're going with this.
I think during the game, I tweeted that they may have a bigger problem at safety than receiver. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far anymore, but I do think they have a huge problem at safety. And with the way that they call their defense and the way that the things that they ask of the other 9 players on the field, it is a lot of pressure on everyone else to make sure that they execute their assignments, because on 50% of their snaps, they're in a 2-high shell. Just basic math here, folks. Those 2 safeties cover a lot less ground when they're next to each other. And because of that, that means there is more space underneath that those guys have to cover in that regard. And then you're also hurting your run game because you're taking someone out of the running game and putting them deep. There was one rep on first down. Damar Hamlin was 25 yards off the ball. Tank Dell doesn't look like Tank Dell yet. He's still recovering from being shot and suffering 2 injuries over the offseason. So he's not up to speed yet. Nico Collins that got hurt, and Stephon Diggs was on the other side of the field. I don't know why you're 25 yards off the ball. Frankly, I don't think Tyreek Hill commands that much respect. Because of that, there's a bunch of stuff that's open underneath. And look, I'll give them their guys credit. You're putting a lot of faith in Terrell Bernard, and you're putting a lot of faith in those underneath guys, notably Taron Johnson when he gets back, and even Christian Benford as an underneath defender. But it's such a disadvantage to everyone else on the field if you're protecting those 2. And I know I get it. The deep ball they had was technically too deep as well. And Cole Bishop and Rasul Douglas just weren't on the same page in terms of the call. And I'm happy that you asked the question about we all wrong, we all right, we all right, we all wrong. Love that, because you heard that 10,000 times as a player. But I just think they're putting everyone at a disadvantage. And that is why when they play those teams that can pass the rock, they struggle, notably the Bengals, with multiple options. multiple options. The Bengals, the Chiefs, when they had multiple options on the outside as well. Just schematically, you're putting those underneath guys at such a disadvantage. And it doesn't look that bad in the scoreboard, in the box score. Oh, the outside corners aren't getting tested. Yeah, no shit, because everyone's it's in the parking lot every snap. The middle of the field is where everything's happening. That's why I wasn't, when everyone was like, oh, Christian Benford is going to lock down Nico Collins. Christian Benford won't guard Nico Collins. Nico Collins is going to operate in the middle of the field. Where does the touchdown happen? Right down Broadway. So I say all that to say it's a lot of pressure they're putting on everyone else outside of those two. And at some point, that's going to come back to bite you.
We talked about it even after the Miami successful game that, yeah, the scheme worked, but the scheme wasn't asking the safeties to do anything. The scheme was asking the safeties to just, like you said, play in the parking lot and make sure no one runs past you. And, teams now with better passing games, multiple weapons. I mean, the way that game started, if Nico Collins stays healthy, it feels like the Bills would have lost that one 31-10, not 23-20. And I know what you're saying with when you make the safety say that the only thing we can really feel good about you doing is making sure nothing goes over your head, then there's so much room underneath. And look, one of the reasons this game, it worked out for the Bills in this game is because they had a 4-man pass rush most of the last 2.5 quarters of this game.
Bingo.
If you don't get that, and this Houston offensive line is definitely not top half. As constituted, they're probably a bottom 10 offensive line, the one that played against Buffalo. When you play an offensive line that can walk and chew gum at the same time, well, then you have to start sending guys. And now if you got 5 rushing and you got 2 deep, do the math. Like Carl just said, it ain't going to be fun for the Bills. And you saw it in this game. I'll bring up something that I just want to kind of rant about separately, but it underlines this point. The Bills, the whole second half, were doing a great job rushing 4, covering with 7, and kind of making it hard. Houston was moving the ball, but not easily, not with chunks. Before the intentional grounding, not that this ended up deciding the game, but kind of did because it set up field position, the Bills get a 3rd and 7. And after not blitzing the whole second half, they send 6. And what does Houston do? They say, thank you very much. We're going to leak Ogunbowale outside, and it was a walk-in first down. He had time to slide, to stay in bounds. It was that easy. So for all the good the Bills did managing the injuries, and despite what Carl's talking about with the safeties, I thought that was a brutally bad call by Bobby Babbitt to send the house in that particular spot when you hadn't had to the whole second half. But, Carl goes back to, the personnel. And I think this Bills team, they do have a philosophy that can function. But, we've seen it now. When you go to a higher level, this is where those backups are going to be exploited to a degree.
They're going to need that front four to win and be dominant, not just like a good unit. They're going to need them to be a really, really, really darn good front to protect those guys. Because if you're going to put that much pressure on everyone underneath when you're not blitzing, because if you watch other teams across the NFL, and listen, Sean McDermott's a great coach, like phenomenal. There's a reason why they're a top 10 unit every single year. He knows what he's doing. There's a reason why he's protecting them. But just as a Bills fan, how many times can you or do you remember DeMar Hamlin guarding someone one-on-one and there being a pass breakup situation? Or how many times can you envision Cole Bishop doing the same? The answer is they don't ask him to do it. And other team safeties are asked to do that. That's all I'm saying. I don't know how they rectify that issue. I don't. Cole Bishop he's young. He'll get much better from October 8th to December 15th. But they're going to have to figure out a way to get those guys up to speed, because in January, people who get paid much more handsomely than I do will figure that out and figure out a way to expose it.
We talk about the defensive line needing to be a factor, and to their credit, they were very good in this game. I spent the whole week wondering how the heck they get a pass rush, and they did a pretty darn good job of it. Again, emphasize that Houston played a rookie making his first start at right tackle, and the Bills abused it all game long. Greg Rousseau, I had him with 8 pressures, which is a ridiculous number the way I charted, and I think 6 of them were on the rookie right tackle. And look, not to knock Greg Rousseau, that is what Greg Rousseau was supposed to do, and he did it. But beyond that, I thought Dewan Smoot had a really good game. Dwayne Carter made some stops in run D. But as a pass rushing group, I thought these guys were pretty good. Carl, let me ask you this, though. Behind that defensive line, Terrell Bernard had 2 ridiculous plays. I don't know if he did much else the rest of the game,
right,
but I don't care. Which one do you want to talk about more, the 4th and 1 stop or the interception?
The interception is some all-pro. I'm not putting that lightly. Some all-pro stuff. C.J. Stroud and Bobby Slowick, they come from that Shanahan style tree where they play on time and on target. They're throwing to spots because they know if they're the team where they know where you're supposed to be and that's where they're going. Well, Terrell Bernard falls off the guy he's supposed to be on and goes back to the safety talk. Go above what the scheme is asking you to do and going on and making a play. That is some absurd Fred Warner plays. Yeah, y'all have heard, if y'all ever seen me on X talk about Fred Warner, that's what 54 does for the San Francisco 49ers. Falling off of a play and saying, I think you want to go behind me. So let me fall off of this real quick. And then the catch wasn't easy either. That was some really, really darn good stuff by Terrell Bernard. And they looked much differently in the middle of the field once he got back there Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and Bernard talked about the play later. It's something that coaches have talked about with him all week long, that when you take that tight end who's running basically straight down the middle of the field, and Bernard says, what his term is, he says he's going to carry the tight end deep down the field. They're going to run a dig behind him. And like, you said, what Houston's trying to do is say, I know the linebacker is going to stick with that tight end. When we bring the receiver into the middle of the field where the linebacker is vacating, that's where the throw is going to be open. And Stroud expected it, pulled the trigger early, but at that moment, Bernard timed it perfectly and stopped with the tight end, moved over to the receiver, and made the interception. High-level coaching, high-level defense. This is not something that I saw a lot from Terrell Bernard last year. Last year he was the guy that he just carried that tight end down the field because that's his job. And it'd be, yes, did you do the right thing? You did. But because you did the right thing, the other team was able to complete a pass. This was, I'm going to do the high-level thing and make the big play. And to me, this is like a step of Bernard going from, okay, you're fine, to this might be a high-level player. Then on top of that, he throws his body at a 4th and 1. There's other stuff going on there that the Bills did well. But to me, that was 43 making that whole play. So, if the Bills get that kind of impact when Ed Oliver, Matt Milano, the rest of those guys come back, this defense is a whole different discussion. But it might be a while before those guys do actually return.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Yeah,
I want to mention on that note, though, because that's really all I have about this game. If they can get more players to play above what's asked of them, that'll go a long way. Because obviously we know Sean McDermott's scheme does a good job of putting guys in the right position. But sometimes you go up against an offensive coordinator who knows exactly where you want to be. So you're going to need an edge rusher to just win off the edge, or a defensive tackle to just win, or a Mike linebacker to just be a human crash dummy and go knock someone out on 4th and 1, or someone to make an amazing play over the middle. They're going to need more players like that. And like you alluded to, maybe that's an Ed Oliver, a Matt Milano in December, Christian Benford, if he gets targeted, or Rasul Douglas jumping routes and stuff like that. They're going to need more guys to say, all right, we know what we're doing now. Let's go make some plays too.
At the end of the day, you need the players to play. People will, and those of us who watch film, we will talk about, I love this scheme. I love the Shanahan tree, what's all this stuff. But you can drop the best X's and O's in the world. If the guy I have is just better than the guy you have, I'm going to win way more often than you. And the Bills need players that can make those plays separate of the scheme. The guys they got on the field right now are not doing it. On defense, it's because of injuries. On offense, it's because these are the receivers that they decided to go to the season with. And those are the two issues we're going to be talking about at least for the next few weeks. Real quick, I'm going to throw this at you. And maybe you don't have an answer here. But, as someone who played high-level football, the Bills are going to see a team this week in the Jets who just fired their head coach. And we see a lot in the game that when you bring a new coach in, it certainly shakes things up at minimum. Now, the Jets are promoting somebody from internally. It's not the same as bringing a guy in from the outside. But have you in your career or any of the guys that you've talked to or know been through a situation where either they had a coach who got fired in season or even a coordinator who got fired in season? How does that change the team? How do things react differently the next day? And even from the other side of the team that's playing against that team, what are some of the intangible things to expect for the Bills this Sunday against the Jets?
So I lost my defensive coordinator senior year, I believe, after we just didn't play well against, I believe, Boston College. We just got the ball ran all over us. A.J. Dillon looked like Reggie Bush. It was a bad game. And then he got fired, I believe, either the next day or that Monday morning. And as a player, you kind of feel responsible, because these guys aren't robots. You develop relationships with them. They're people. You're cool with them. You spend more hours with these coaches than you do your own loved ones. So that's the type of bond we're talking about here. And I don't think we won the next week, but we definitely felt a sense of, no, we got to do better than this because this is unacceptable. He got paid handsomely, but someone lost the way to provide for their family. That's the way we thought. That's the way at least I took it and the other guys in the room. So, I mean, I imagine the Jets are going to take it the same way because there are some people on the team who maybe weren't a fan of his, of the quarterback, but I think the defensive side of the ball enjoyed who he was and the positions they put him in. And that first game bump from getting fired, I think is kind of real because as a player, you feel a certain type of, if you hated him, well then, hey, he's gone. Let's go play free. And if you like the dude, you're like, we kind of feel responsible for that. Let's play in his honor.
Something else the Bills are going to have to deal with this week. The Jets obviously have a ton of talented, players. They haven't played like much of a team yet this year. And I think it'll be another good battle on the outside. Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, not quite Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs for sure, but another good test for the Bills corners. And I think that, the thing for me that I'm watching with this game is the Jets want to run the ball. They haven't the last couple of weeks. The Bills haven't really been able to stop many teams from running the ball. Which of these issues get solved, I think probably will go a long way towards, which team wins this game. All right, as always, you can check out Let's Talk Ball at RochesterFirst.com, on WIVB.com. You can see it at RochesterFirst.com. You got to click on the 8 Sports Extra tab. We're also on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Next week, Bills on the road, Monday night against the Jets. I'm going to tell you, Carl's going to find this out right this second. We probably won't be producing our podcast until Wednesday night because I am on empty in terms of like the constant travel. But we will talk about Bills and Jets certainly sometime next week. Thanks as always for watching and listening. For Carl Jones, I'm Thad Brown. We'll see you next week talking Bills and Jets.